Okay, let's talk about the obesity epidemic. It's this huge topic, right? And we all kind of feel like we've got a handle on it. But what if I told you the way we're even thinking about it is just wrong? Today, we're going to look at this whole debate through a new lens, one borrowed from computer science that might just change how you see the entire problem.
All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to kick things off with this kind of wild tech metaphor. Then we'll see how it applies to two totally different views of the human body. After that, we'll check out a proposed system reboot for our food environment. And we'll wrap up by asking the big question: which approach, which architecture actually makes the most sense? Let's dive in.
So, where does the conversation about obesity usually begin? Well, almost always it starts with some pretty scary language, right? A real sense of crisis. I mean, listen to this: a greater threat than terrorism. Wow. That's a real quote from a US Surgeon General. It frames obesity as this massive, urgent threat. But here's the big question. What if that whole way of framing it is the actual problem? What if we're all using the wrong instruction manual?
So to get this new frame, we've got to dip into the world of IT for a second. First up, we have what's called a thick client. Just think of your regular desktop or laptop computer. It's got everything it needs right there on the machine. The operating system, the software, all your files. It's totally self-sufficient. It works on its own. And then you've got the total opposite, a thin client. This is a much simpler device. Think of those basic computers you might see at a library or a school. All the real work, the processing, the storage, it's all happening somewhere else, on a big central server. It's completely dependent on that network connection. Without it, it's pretty much a paperweight.
And that brings us right to the heart of this whole thing. When we're talking about our own bodies, our health, which one are we? Are we self-contained thick clients? Or are we more like thin clients, completely at the mercy of the network around us? Because believe me, how you answer that changes everything. All right, let's dive into that first idea. What does it look like if we view the body as a thick client? You know, this idea that we're each our own self-contained machine, and we're responsible for keeping it running. You can see how this lines up perfectly with the story we hear all the time, right? The personal responsibility model. The body is the computer, its operating system is our biology, our metabolism is the local processor, and we, the user, are responsible for maintenance. So if things go south, well, it's seen as a hardware problem, an individual failure. And when that hardware does start to malfunction, biologically, it gets pretty serious. That excess fat, especially the stuff around our organs, isn't just sitting there. Oh no, it basically turns into this rogue, angry organ that starts pumping out stress signals and inflammatory gunk throughout your entire system. It's like a computer virus that's corrupting everything from the inside out. And the fallout from that internal system failure, it's huge. All that inflammation can lead to things like type 2 diabetes. And get this, that condition alone can knock an average of 10 years off a person's life. From this thick client point of view, that's a total system crash, and it's all happening inside the machine. Okay, but what if that's the wrong way to look at it? What if it's not a hardware failure at all? Let's flip the script and explore the other idea, the body as a thin client, where our health is almost entirely dictated by the network we're plugged into. To even start talking about the thin client view, you have to understand the rules of the network. And in this whole debate, the biggest rule of them all is the body mass index, or BMI. It's the yardstick. It's how doctors, governments, pretty much everyone decides who is overweight. But here's where it gets really interesting. Look at where this thing actually came from. It wasn't invented by a doctor for health. Nope. It was created by an astronomer trying to find the average man. Then insurance companies picked it up to calculate risk. And then in 1998, a government panel just decided to lower the threshold. And bam, overnight, 37 million Americans were suddenly overweight without gaining a single pound. The network administrators just changed the settings on everyone. So you gotta ask, who are these network administrators? Well, one argument you'll hear is that it's a health industrial complex. The idea here is that you have this interconnected system of researchers, government agencies, and pharmaceutical companies who all kind of benefit from the problem being defined in a certain way. And what's the effect of tweaking those network rules? Well, if you lower the BMI for overweight, you've just massively expanded your customer base for diet drugs, weight loss systems, you name it. In this thin client view, the individual isn't the one failing, they're just a user on a network that's designed for commercial gain. Okay, So if you believe the network is the problem, then trying to fix millions of individual computers one by one is a losing battle, right? The solution has to be a system-wide reboot. And one of the biggest ideas on the table is to change the user interface of our food, basically the labels on the front of the package.
But as you can imagine, whenever people push for this kind of system update with clearer food labels, the industry pushes back hard. They say it's too expensive, it's not fair to call foods good or bad. But as you can see, for every one of their claims, there's a pretty solid, fact-based counterpoint.
Let's make this real. Take a product like a protein bar. The front of the box screams healthy, right? It talks about protein, vitamins. But under a new labeling system, it might also have to show a clear warning that it's high in saturated fat. This kind of system update is meant to cut through what some call health washing and give you, the user, a much clearer signal. And this right here really gets to the core of it. On the left, you've got the industry's current system. It's kind of complicated, you have to do the math yourself. On the right is the proposed change, a big, simple, clear warning. Now, if you're a busy parent rushing through the grocery store, which one of those is actually going to help you?
And that whole argument that changing labels is just too difficult or expensive, it really falls apart when you see how often companies already change their packaging for stuff like movie promotions or holidays. Clearly, they can do it. The question is, why not for public health?
So, we've laid out two totally different ways of seeing this problem. You have the thick client model, where we're all self-sufficient, and the thin client model, where we're all dependent on the network. Let's just put them side by side one last time. So let's recap. The thick client view says the problem is inside us, our biology, our metabolism. So the fix has to be individual, diet, exercise, pure willpower. But the thin client view says the problem is outside us, in the food environment, in the very definitions we use. And if that's the case, the fix has to be systemic. We need to change the rules and update the whole network.
And so this whole tech metaphor really leaves us with a huge question. Where should we focus our energy? Is the best strategy to help millions of individuals upgrade their hardware to survive in a pretty tough environment? Or should we be trying to redesign the entire network to make being healthy the easy default choice for everyone? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but thinking about where we put our focus, well, that could change everything.